Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 25 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail in Week 3 and the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, it's our Big Friday episode. We got a lot of good information for you to prepare our viewers and listeners for Week 3.
And a lot of injuries. This list, I'm still scrolling to get through all of them.
A lot of injuries. I'll be honest, a lot of them are not going to be significant, but still, we are noting them just in case. We record our Friday shows on Thursday night, so anything can happen on Friday, but you're listening Friday morning, so this is absolutely the most up-to-date information we could give you, unless we're recording after the Thursday night game, which we're not doing. If this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. We do the show on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and a live show on Sundays. For the weekly shows, you can find them on all audio streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Anchor, and anywhere where you could get a podcast, you could get the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It really would help. If you'd rather watch the show instead of just listening to it, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, hit that subscribe button and drop a like on whatever video you enjoy, whatever video you are watching. As I said, we do a live show every single Sunday. It's 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, including this Sunday. We've had a lot of good questions come in the last 2 weeks, and hopefully we could answer some other great questions coming up this Sunday. So 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on our YouTube, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, our Facebook, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, or our Twitter, PrimeTimeFFPod. We're going to go from 8:30 to about 9:30, answer all of your questions. We're going to break down each game, give you a bust, a sleeper, and an MVP. It's going to be a lot of fun. Come with any fantasy questions. We love to help you out. And if you're not up early enough, if you miss it and you wake up at like 10 o'clock, we do post a graphic every single Sunday for start and sit. So we'd love to answer your questions there as well. We're going to post that graphic on all of our social media channels, which you can interact and follow us on. It's PrimetimeFFPod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Then YouTube and Facebook, like I said, is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. We're going to start off with some injury updates and the news. Dalton Schultz's knee, he did not practice on Thursday. We said it on our show yesterday, which was on, I guess, our Thursday morning show. The days are just blending together at this point, the recording and the days. So on yesterday's show, we did mention Schultz's knee injury. It was unlikely he would play Monday. Bench him, go pick up a tight end. You can't wait until Monday, because even if he does play, he should be limited. Mm-hmm. James Conner, ankle injury. He did practice on Thursday, and he was seen practicing on Wednesday, but I think they still gave him a do not practice tab. Conner looks good to go. I would lock him into your lineup. You drafted him pretty early. I think he's safe to lock in. Watch out for some limited snap counts, so we'll see what happens with that. He may be a bit touchdown dependent, but he should be good to go. DeAndre Swift's ankle injury practiced on Thursday. Really good sign. Dan Campbell said on Wednesday that he looked better than last week, or felt better than last week, so he's fine. Just noting the injuries. George Kittle's groin, he's set to make his debut on Sunday after a limited practice on both Wednesday and Thursday. He'll be squaring up against the Denver Broncos. Alvin Kamara, and by the way, I should mention he should be in your lineups as well. You drafted him tight end, 3 or 4, something like that. Alvin Kamara with his rib injury, he was limited on Wednesday and Thursday. He should be good to go as well. You're locking him into your lineups. Keenan Allen's hamstring injury looked like he practiced today. I think I saw some videos of him catching passes from Herbert. So he, again, another one you're putting in your lineup. I don't love the injury, but you're going to play him. Hunter Renfrow, concussion, has not practiced on Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's going to be really tough for him to play. You have to clear concussion protocol tomorrow and practice tomorrow, meaning, Friday when you're listening to the show. I don't think Renfrow's going to play, so Renfrow's not going to be in your lineup. Justin Herbert's rib injury, he practiced on Thursday. He's good to go. Lamar Jackson's elbow practiced on Thursday. He's good to go. Gabriel Davis's ankle, he said he was 100% confident he plays, but you can't always trust the players. However, he did practice on Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll trust this one. He should be good to go. J.K. Dobbins, his knee injury, he practiced full participant Wednesday and Thursday. I think he's going to play. I don't know if you have an opinion on this one, but I think he's playing.
Yeah, I think they got to get him out on the football field. I think they got to get him reps. I don't think he's 100%. So, we'll probably talk about him a little bit later on, but I'm not I wouldn't buy playing him his first week back off of a major injury.
The Bucs and the Packers game is shaping up to be a game that's being played at a hospital, I guess, or maybe at a retirement home at the age of these quarterbacks. The Bucs receivers injuries. Julio Jones' knee has not practiced Wednesday or Thursday, same as last week. Chris Godwin has not practiced Wednesday or Thursday. Do not expect him to play at all, but noting it. Russell Gage, Scotty Miller, Rashad Perriman were both limited on Wednesday, and I think some of them were limited, some of them were full on Thursday, but those three did practice for the Bucs. Leonard Fournette's hamstring, he was limited Thursday. He should be good to go. This should be a big Leonard Fournette game. As for the Packers, Alan Lazard didn't practice Thursday, ankle injury. Sammy Watkins, hamstring, held out of practice Thursday. Christian Watson, hamstring injury, held out of practice Thursday. This seems like a coach's decision to hold them all out on Thursday. I don't understand it. I thought LaFleur would hold them out on Wednesday instead. Just be careful of that. Like, a lot of injuries in this game on both sides of the ball. Michael Gallup, knee injury. He practiced on Wednesday and Thursday. He's looking to suit up against the Giants on Monday night. Christian McCaffrey popped up on the injury report on Thursday with an ankle injury. It was about time. It was gonna happen at some point. He should play. He should still be in your lineups. And finally, Jacoby Myers did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Looks like he will not be playing in a phenomenal matchup against the Ravens. I actually did have him on my all boom team as in 30 minutes ago. I thought he'd have a great game against the Ravens. Gave up a lot of points last 2 weeks, but he has not practiced. All right, Nick, I'm a little out of breath. Any thoughts on any of these injuries that I just read out? I think I just read out like 15 injuries.
No, I think, I'm going to just do a cheap little plug here. Come in Sunday morning, 8:30. We'll have most of the injuries updated by then. And then you could drop questions on our Instagram, Twitter. We'll be happy to answer anything that comes through.
Thank you for that. I needed a good 10 seconds to take a nice gulp of water. Let's get into our week 3 all boom teams. And me and Nick may define boom as a little bit differently. The way that I view boom is, I think they should either finish at the, towards the top of their position, or if they're like a flex play, they should outperform whatever their projection is for this week because they have a really good matchup. Me and Nick will go through each of our all boom team: quarterback, 2 receivers, 2 running backs, 2 flexes, and a tight end, and tell you why they are on our boom team. So, Nick, let's start with you. Who is your all boom quarterback for week 3?
It's quarterback I was very low on for the season, but you always got to play the matchup this week. I'm going with Matthew Stafford. Last week, he put up 272 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons are a sneaky good defense. They're not great, but they're not awful. But I will tell you what secondary is awful. The Arizona Cardinals, who he has this week, who have allowed the most points to fantasy quarterbacks through 2 weeks. I think if you have Stafford, you probably drafted another guy right after him. You're playing the matchups each week. This is the matchup that you want to take advantage of, and you want to plug Matthew Stafford in your lineups.
That's a good one. And the good part about these all boom team is you won't see me and Nick pick stars most of the time. In certain situations, I do have a star on my all boom team. My all boom quarterback is Joe Burrow, the quarterback 11 on the year. Even though Nick is not a fan of Burrow and has been criticizing him a lot.
I'm a fan of Burrow. I'm not a fan of this season.
Sure, but again, Nick has been low on Burrow. However, Burrow right now is the quarterback 11 on the season, and that means he is ahead of the likes of Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. You get the point.
I haven't heard a quarterback that we took Joe Burrow over in drafts, though. That's interesting.
Which one?
I haven't heard it. You didn't say any quarterbacks that were their ADP was higher than Joe Burrow yet, so that's a little interesting.
I think all their ADPs are right there. They were all right there. You were taking Burrow, Stafford, Russ, Carr. Like they were all in rounds 8 or 9. Like I'm just saying. Anyway, Joe Burrow has a great matchup this week. It is the New York Jets. They do not have a good defense. They do not have a good football team. They're going to be picking top 5 of the NFL draft right next to my Seattle Seahawks. That week 13 game can really decide who picks higher at that point. Anyway, Jets have they're not good against quarterbacks. I think they're top. I forget what the number is. They're actually average. I'll say they're average against quarterbacks, but they faced Jacoby Brissett. So Lamar Jackson. Well, Lamar torched them. So
Lamar's the QB1 in fantasy. And
So I'm so this is a get right game for the Bengals. It has to be. They're 0-2. They haven't looked bad. The turnovers are a problem, and the offensive line that did not play a snap together in preseason has been a problem. There's talent on the offensive line, but when you don't have snaps together, there's no chemistry there. Missing blocking assignments. Play calling's been iffy with Zach Taylor. But this is the get-right game. It has to be. If the Bengals go out and lose this game, that's really bad. It should be a good game for all Bengals, though. That's why I have Burrow there. This is a game that if you are a top-tier team, you go out there and win this game by 10+. Who is your first wide receiver on your boom team?
All right, we said we don't take stars. This time I took a star. I took someone that I think is going to finish top 5 at their position. I'm going with A.J. Brown this week. Last week against Minnesota, they absolutely torched them on the ground, but they spread the ball in the air. This week against Washington, who has been terrible against wide receiver ones, he's going to go off. Last week, they had Christian Kirk, who put up a monster, or 2 weeks ago, they had Christian Kirk, who put up a monster stat line. Last week, Amon-Ra, another monster stat line. So now A.J. Brown gets a chance at this secondary. He's going off. He's going to have a monster game. Jalen Hurts is going to destroy that secondary, and A.J. Brown's stat line is going to look a lot more like week 1. Week 1, he put up 10 catches for 155 yards. I wouldn't be surprised if he repeated it with a touchdown.
I'm taking kind of a star. If you count him as that so far, I'm taking the star out of the Chargers. Mike Williams, who's the wide receiver 1 over there. I don't care that Keenan Allen's on that roster. I just don't. Mike Williams is the better receiver over there. Last week without Keenan Allen, he had 25 points, 8 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. The Jaguars have allowed the 12th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. That's kind of padded due to their week 2 shutdown of the Colts, where the wide receiver 1 over there was Paris Campbell. I'm looking more towards week 1, where the Jags let 3 receivers go over 10 points, though. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel. On top of that, Keenan Allen, even if he plays, like, the hamstring injury lingers. Keenan's getting older. I think Mike Williams is the stronger, faster, better receiver. And I think this might be the last time we see Keenan Allen in a Chargers uniform this year. I just don't see him being a Charger after this year. And Mike Williams got paid, and I think he's the wide receiver 1 over there. So this should be a big Mike Williams game. I believe in a big game for those Chargers. Who's your wide receiver 2?
It's a guy that went way too late in drafts for the draft capital that this team used on them. It's Drake London. He's looking like
a good one. I thought about putting him up there. This is a good one.
He's looking like, and I'm a Jets fan. You see it on my hat. You know I love Garrett Wilson, but Drake London does look like the best rookie receiver in the class. He's the guy I wanted to fall to the Jets at 10. He's doing exactly what Kyle Pitts should have done. He's doing exactly what we expected from Pitts, but even better. He's currently averaging 18.5 fantasy points per game, only through 2 games. He has 20 targets in those games, and he's just going to continue to go off. He's a lock right now. He's a lock for the rest of the season, in my mind. This week he's got Seattle, and Seattle's not a great defense. He should just put up another great stat line in his young career.
I'm going with the player who's opposite Drake London on that field. I'm going with DK Metcalf, and there's not going to be many games where I tell you to play DK Metcalf comfortably, but the Falcons have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers through 2 weeks. Back-to-back weeks, 2 receivers have had double-digit points. The first week, it was Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. And I think Olave may have had double-digit points as well week 1. I'd have to fact-check that. And last week, Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp both had double-digit fantasy points. Allen Robinson should have had 20 points. He should have had the second touchdown that they blew a whistle because of a medical tent timeout, and the whistle was blown when the ball was in his hands. Anyway, my point being, the Falcons are really bad against wide receivers. DK should have a big game. I think Lockett has a chance for, a good enough game as well. You got to pick your spots with DK. This is a spot to pick. He should have a good week. Who's your first running back?
My first running back should not be called, a boom bust candidate, because they're currently the RB5 on the season, but they were taken in the 8th round of your draft. This guy has 200 yards from scrimmage, 2 touchdowns, and has been one of the most efficient players in the NFL right now, averaging 8.7 yards per play. It is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the guy that was drafted in the early 2nd round his rookie year, is starting to look like that player that you drafted. Let's keep in mind they took him in the 1st round of the draft. I know it was the last pick of the 1st round, but they used heavy draft capital on him. They want to get him involved, and this looks like the year that they are going to. I know he hasn't had a ton of usage, but like I said, he's been incredibly efficient with his usage, And Andy Reid loves efficiency. He puts the guy out on the field that is giving him the best production. And on each play when Clyde has touched the ball, he's averaged 8.7 yards. That is a lot of yardage, there's not enough usage, but that usage is going to go up as long as this efficiency stays the way it does. Clyde's a top 5 running back right now. I'm not saying he'll finish as a top 5 running back on the year or even on this week, but for right now, you have to play him in your lineup.
I don't like picking stars in this segment, but when a star has disappointed through the first 2 weeks and you really need a get right game and you start thinking to yourself, should I trade this guy? Should I bench him? Then it's time to give you guys a boost. You need to have some optimism. I can't speak right now. The Detroit Lions allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs last year. They did not improve that defense from a running perspective because they have allowed the most fantasy points to running backs through 2 weeks in 2022. Miles Sanders had double-digit fantasy points week 1, and 2 other Eagles running backs scored touchdowns, plus Jalen Hurts. Week 2, Antonio Gibson had double-digit fantasy points. So this week, we have Dalvin Cook going up against the defense that has allowed the most fantasy points through the first 2 weeks. It is a get-right game for the Minnesota Vikings. It's a get-right game for Dalvin Cook. On top of that, Dalvin Cook's last game against Detroit, we have to go back to 2020. He's missed the last 3. However, that last game against Detroit, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, 37 fantasy points, was probably the highest fantasy scorer on the week. On top of that, Kevin O'Connell said he needed to do a better job of getting Dalvin Cook in a rhythm. That's what you want to hear. Last week, Sean McVay said Allen Robinson has to get more involved. Well, Allen Robinson had 15 fantasy points and should have had another touchdown. When a coach goes out and says that they need to get their star involved, they usually do. And I spoke about this on Thursday's show. A lot of these coaches need to get their running backs in a better rhythm. Derrick Henry's not in rhythm. McCaffrey's not in rhythm. Taylor was not in rhythm last week. Cook not in a rhythm. Like, these running backs, they're so good, but the coaches aren't helping them at the moment. The offense isn't helping them. So if O'Connell can help Dalvin Cook out, if the line can help him out, and that offense can get rolling, Dalvin Cook's gonna have a really nice game. You're gonna pat yourself on the back for drafting him in round 1. You won't be punching yourself in the face like I was last week when Cooper Kupp scored 35 and Cook scored 12. Who's your second running back on your boom team?
He's a guy I drafted early in our league. It's Dameon Pierce. It's the time to lock him in. Last week against Denver, he looked really, really good against a tough run defense. He had 15 carries for 70 yards. And more importantly, Rex Burkhead didn't see a single carry out of that backfield. I think they're going to slowly start using him more, and usually week 3 is when you see the rookies rise. This is going to be a monster week for him. I also saw a crazy stat, which was for rookie running backs, if they exceed 13 touches in either week 1 or week 2, 70% of them have had over 1,000 yard seasons their rookie year. Dameon Pierce, week 2, over 13 touches. The stats say he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. I'm going to back him this week. And, of course, what does he get? But nothing better than a layup against the Chicago Bears. I think everybody that was really high on him and started reaching on him rounds or 2 rounds early is finally going to see that payoff week 3, and you're going to lock and load him for the rest of the year.
And I believe Lovie Smith, I don't know if you mentioned, but I believe Lovie Smith also noted this week that he wants to get Dameon Pierce more involved, that he finishes plays unlike the other running backs. So listen to those coaches. My second running back boom, I have David Montgomery, a guy that I had as a bust last week, and I was kind of wrong about that. He had 100 yards on the ground, didn't have a touchdown, but he looked good. It didn't look like Khalil Herbert was breathing down his neck. This week, he's facing a Texans defense that's allowed the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. Week 1, Jonathan Taylor had like 36 fantasy points. I think he had like 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last week, I also predicted Javonte Williams to have a big week. I think he only had like 13 points because Nathaniel Hackett is the absolute worst coach in the league and should be fired and should be like ripped. They should put him through the streets naked like they did to Cersei in Game of Thrones and shout shame for his ridiculous, awful play calling. This is going to be a theme of the show. Last year, I hated the Falcons. Well, you know what? Denver, you're my team this year. Nathaniel Hackett, you're my guy. Anyway, David Montgomery looked much better last week. Great matchup, and they don't throw the ball. That's kind of going to coincide with my next pick. So anyway, I think David Montgomery has a good game. Who is your first flex option that you really like this week?
Do you remember what I said about Drake London? He looks like the best rookie receiver in the class.
I do.
Well, I'm going to tell you who is the best rookie
Oh, no,
receiver in
come
the class.
on.
It is Garrett freaking Wilson, baby. He's the only rookie receiver averaging more points per game than Drake London. He has 22 targets through 2 games, 2 touchdowns last week, 150 yards through those 2. And guess what he gets? He gets the pitiful, incredibly hungover Bengals secondary. The Jets have had bad game script or great game script for wide receivers in the last 2 games. Joe Flacco is averaging 50 passing attempts per game. Joe Flacco has 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. That kind of volume can only lead to monster usage from your wide receivers. Garrett Wilson saw increased snap share. He's going to see even more this week. He's going to see massive workload. If Joe Flacco's thrown 50 times, I can guarantee you 11 of those balls are going to Garrett Wilson, and he will have another monster day.
Well, Nick picked the guy that I'm not high on. I'm picking a guy that Nick's not high on. Miles Sanders. I don't like Miles Sanders. I've said it before, but I have to give him credit now. He's had back-to-back weeks with double-digit fantasy points. Over 80 yards in back-to-back weeks. He's averaging 14 fantasy points, and he drafted him around like 8 or 9. I have to give him credit now. On top of that, he's facing the Commanders defense that has allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs. DeAndre Swift just torched him last week, and he was limited. James Robinson looked good week 1, and Travis Etienne should have had 2 touchdowns. Like, this is a great matchup for Miles Sanders. I really don't love playing him, but I have to be honest about it. Like, he looks good. The Eagles offense is going to score a lot of points. As long as Hurts doesn't vulture every touchdown, I think Miles Sanders gets in the end zone here. I think he has like 60 yards. So I think you're looking at another 15-point fantasy day in your flex spot. Who's your second flex option for this week?
All right, Nick, I took one of my wide receivers. It's time for me to take one of yours. I'm locking in Tyler Lockett this week. Last week, he put up 9 catches and 100-plus yards against a very good defense, which just proves that he is going to continue to have great game script and great game script usage. Now, I don't love Lockett on the season, but in a matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, who have allowed the 30 most points to the wide receiver position, I am absolutely locking him in with that kind of usage.
So, behind the scenes, I had Jacoby Myers locked into my second flex spot about an hour ago. I really liked my argument. The Ravens have allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season so far. Jacoby Myers had like 20 points last week or something. He had like 12 targets. I really liked my argument. Well, Jacoby Myers hasn't practiced on Wednesday and Thursday, so I don't know if he's playing, so I can't say it. So I was between 2 guys. My first guy was Devontae Smith. I think he had 15 fantasy points last week or 13, something like that. He had 80 yards on like 6 targets. Good bounce back game for Devontae Smith. And I think he's going to be a pretty good piece of that Eagles offense. And I would play Devontae Smith this week. I didn't realize I had a second bear on my team because I did have to switch my pick. Like literally 20 minutes ago before the show. And I went with Darnell Mooney. Here's why. Darnell Mooney's facing the Texans, who have allowed the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Over the last 2 weeks, the wide receiver ones against the Texans. Michael Pittman had 27 fantasy points week 1. Courtland Sutton had 19 fantasy points week 2. Okay, Nick's going to talk about Darnell Mooney. I'm spoiling a little bit, but here are the pros to Darnell Mooney. The Texans are bad on defense. He's the wide receiver 1. They don't have a corner to cover him. If Darnell Mooney's going to break out, if he's going to have a good game, this is the week to do it. And if he doesn't, he's on your drop watch. Somebody dropped him in one of my leagues earlier today. He's on drop watch if he doesn't have a good game on Sunday. Do I think he has a good game? I do. Would I bet money on it? No. Would I play Darnell Mooney this week? I'm playing him already.
Well, you just bet on him booming over Devontae Smith, so that's a bold one.
Yeah, I went with the bull pick, I guess, more so for fun. That sounds kind of bad. I'm trying to figure out who else am I playing in my dynasty league? I had him in at one point. I do. So you know what? I am playing Darnell Mooney, so he is going to boom because he's on my team and he's going to boom this week. It has to be this week or it's never going to be. Like, that's a bad way of looking at it. Amari Cooper did it last week. Like, if it's not this week, he's a true boomer bust. Great matchup. If they're going to let Justin Fields throw, this is the week to do it. That's all I'm saying, guys. That's all I got. Who's your tight end boom of the week?
I was very high on him before the year. I said he would finish as a top 10 tight end, even though he was going undrafted. And now he's healthy. Now he looks good. And now I'm back in my take even more. It's Logan Thomas. This week he has Philly, and this is the week where he is going to boom. Philly has allowed the 6th most amount of points to the tight end position through 2 weeks. Last week he put up 3 for 40 and a touchdown. There's no reason he can't repeat that now that he's getting healthier and now that he's getting more of a snap share. I expect him to match the stat line. I completely do, and I think he could exceed it with more usage, which it looks like Washington is going to continue to use Wentz, because Wentz is apparently playing like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen through 2 weeks. So as long as he's playing like that and those weapons are catching those balls, they're going to have a lot of upside for touchdowns. You got to plug Logan Thomas into your lineup.
Hey, Nick, do you know which tight end on the season is leading the NFL in targets at the moment?
I do.
It's got to be Travis Kelce, right?
No.
It's got to be Mark Andrews, who was drafted in round 3.
No, he's the guy I locked last week.
You're right. It's Tyler Higbee. He's second on the team in targets over Allen Robinson. He has the most targets in the league for tight ends. The Cardinals have allowed the most points to tight ends through 2 games. Great matchup. Lots of targets. Team that scores a lot of points. I don't think I have to really talk about this for more than 30 seconds, but there's only positives working in Tyler Higbee's favor. If you need a streamer tight end, if you don't have Dalton Schultz this week, or if you're just streaming tight ends and you had Tyler Higbee on your bench, this is the week to play him. Play Tyler Higbee. I think you'll be really happy with the points that you see. Let us go to our all bust teams. Who's your quarterback? Your bust quarterback for week 1. Week 3. Week 1. I wish it was week 1. I wish we still had 18 weeks of football left.
Nick.
You're not going to bust him.
No,
you're not. You are not.
I have to. He's been so bad. That offense, the coaching.
He's the 11th best quarterback in the league.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not him. It's not him.
It's not. Oh, are we riding?
It's Russell Wilson.
We're riding. Oh, yes, we're
riding Russell Wilson. I love him. I love him so much as a player, as a human being, as a Walter Payton Man of the Year, as a leader. Like, everything is there to love about Russell Wilson. But for some reason, he cannot click with this Broncos team.
Oh, I'll tell you the reason. I will tell you the reason.
Through 2 weeks, they're averaging 14. He's averaging 14.5 fantasy points per game. And that was against Seattle and Houston. This week, he has San Francisco, a team that he seemed to always struggle with in his career.
But he always beats them. He does always beat them.
Last year, he averaged 190 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in each of those games. That's enough for 15 to 16 fantasy points. This year, he has no problem slinging it between the 20s, but he has been the worst quarterback in the NFL in the red zone, throwing under 50% completion. With so many injuries at that wide receiver position. It looks like Judy probably will not play. KJ Hamler probably not going to play. Tim Patrick out for the year. There's no reason I can trust Russell Wilson yet, other than how talented he is. But I can't take him in this matchup. I was thinking of quarterbacks that are right in his range. And there are 3 guys I would comfortably start over him without a second question. Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, and Carson Wentz. And
Carson Wentz get that Eagles defense?
Yeah. I'd rather play Wentz than I would play Russell Wilson this week.
I would love to say it's comfortably start Kirk, but I started Kirk Monday night and I lost by a point.
Hey,
3 picks.
He's got the Lions.
He does have the Lions.
It's at 1 o'clock.
It is a get-right game. It's not prime time. So my quarterback bust of the week is the quarterback 5 on the season. And a quarterback that should get a lot of love at the moment. That's Tua Tagovailoa. I like Tua on the season. I like seeing the improvement. And you know what? I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him because people seem to root against him. Maybe it's because he's from Alabama, who I don't like. I do not like Alabama, but this is the NFL now. I think he's a good kid, good player, like a good person. I think he gets a lot of hate for, not a lot of reason. I know he was drafted in the first round. That comes with expectations, but I'm rooting for him. This is not the week to play Tua. If you pick them up, stash them on your bench. You should have a good rest of the season. You do not play him against the Buffalo Bills defense, who has allowed the least amount of points to just about every position in the NFL, definitely quarterbacks. But if I go through the first 2 weeks from a fantasy perspective, number 1 against quarterbacks, Bills. Number 4 against running backs, Bills. Number 5 against the receivers, Bills. And number 8 against tight ends, Bills. I could literally put any Dolphin here and say bench them or they're going to bust. Tua's definitely a bench, though. Last year in 2 games against the Bills, he averaged 8 points. One of those games, he scored 0.5. I think they lost like 40-3. Tua's a good stash on your bench this week, though. Nope, not a good play. Who's your first wide receiver bust?
I'm going with a guy that I feel like it's kind of cheap to take him, like to say him, but I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable playing him if I owned him in any of my teams. It's CeeDee Lamb. Last week, he put up 7 for 75, which is absolutely a very respectable stat line. And he saw 11 targets through in each of the first 2 games. But right now, he's got Cooper Rush at quarterback. I think that's a one-off. The guy he reminds me most of is a guy named Kyle Allen. Do you remember Kyle Allen, Nick?
I do remember Kyle Allen.
He was a 1-week wonder. He's kind of like a Mike White, as us Jets fans remember, where he had that one lightning in a bottle game.
Geno Smith, he's a 1-week wonder.
Yep, there you go, Geno, exactly. So he reminds me of a perfect 1-week wonder. And this week he's got a primetime game against the red-hot New York Giants. In 2 weeks, the Giants have pretty much shut down the quarterbacks and the wide receiver positions. And the 2 quarterbacks they played against, I don't like them in Ryan Tannehill and Baker Mayfield. But you can't tell me Cooper Rush is on that level. So if it were Dak playing, right? If Dak had the Giants in prime time, I'm locking in CeeDee Lamb, but I'm not at that trust level yet with Cooper Rush. If I have him in a 1-flex league and I have 4 good receiving options with good matchups, I would absolutely look to pivot from CD.
All right. I have another stud wide receiver that I'm going to say you may want to consider benching. Probably not. You're probably going to flex him or something, but he has bust potential. Terry McLaurin. The Minnesota Vikings shut down. Minnesota got shut down by the Eagles last week. Justin Jefferson, I think he had under 10 fantasy points. That was wide receiver 1, the guy who scored like 40 points week 1, got absolutely shut down. Eagles defense, I think, is legit. I know the Lions look better against them week 1, but that was week 1. They have a lot of guys on their defense that are really good at corner. I mean, Darius Slay on Monday night had 3 picks. Then on the other side, they have James Bradbury, who they signed. Really good front 7 that they drafted throughout the years. On top of that, my favorite thing to do with divisional opponents is go to the last year. Well, let's look at Terry McLaurin last year against the Eagles, when the Eagles were a top 3 defense against fantasy wide receivers. 5.1 points, and then 2 weeks later, 6.1. That's not a good track record. They know how to shut down Terry McLaurin. I would rather play Curtis Samuel this week than Terry McLaurin. I think he gets shut down. Who's your second wide receiver bust?
Nick, remember how I said I love stacks? Looks like me and you created a stack because I am busting Jalen Waddle this week. So far in the season, Waddle has absolutely proven me wrong. He's got 3 touchdowns, 240 yards through 2 weeks. I believe he's the wide receiver 5 in fantasy, so he's been a monster, but he's only done it on 15 catches. That is a massive outlier to put up those types of numbers. So he's going to come back to earth. Tua's going to come back to earth, and his numbers are going to come down. And what team, out of all the teams in the league, would I bet would be able to shut down Tua? It would absolutely be the juggernaut defense that they're going against in the Buffalo Bills. It's less doubt in Waddle and more doubt in Tua, and I think the production goes away for Waddle. Tyreek Hill has had no problem burning that defense in the past, so I think they're just going to keep looking to Tyreek, and Tyreek will be able to do his thing against Buffalo, but I can't see Waddle putting up this monster type of game that he has. I think you're looking more closer to like a 4 for 50 yards or 5 for 50 yards, and you're really just hoping that he finds the end zone to give him the good week. But I think his floor is you're going to see how low his floor really can be with Tua against this team.
And the thing about Tua and this offense is that they're good, but they're not great. I think you need a great offense and a great quarterback to beat the Bills. I could probably count them on my hand. A healthy Bucs team. By healthy enough Bucs team. The Chargers, again, healthy. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Like, it needs to be like one of those teams.
Or like Jacksonville last year. But
yeah, that was, again,
they added Von Miller. It's a whole
weird games happen in the NFL.
Yeah.
My second wide receiver bust is a guy I drafted in, I think, 2 leagues. I liked him everywhere. Marquise Brown. I'm still scared of Jalen Ramsey. And here's the thing. a lot of people say that Marquise Brown has a good matchup this week. Maybe I shouldn't be this scared of Ramsey, considering Cooper Kupp torched him, and I think last week Drake London had a really good game as well. The Rams have given up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers, so on paper he doesn't really have a bad matchup. But to me, Marquise Brown's just been like average, or I may have expected a little bit more. He is averaging like 14 fantasy points, so it's not bad. I am playing both sides of the coin. He's been out targeted by Zach Ertz and Greg Dortch in 2 different games. That worries me a little bit. And Ramsey, like I'm just saying Ramsey a lot, but like still, when you're facing that corner, I am a little bit worried, unless you're like a Stephon Diggs or a Cooper Kupp, where I know that you could go out there and get me my points. I don't trust Marquise Brown to do that. And the fact that the Cardinals have been down 20 points in back-to-back games, like this could get ugly. So let's move on to the running backs. Who is your first running back bust?
All right, Nick, do you remember the line I always told you? The one I said before the year. You take the projection and not the player's name. I'm going to do your favorite thing. I'm going to ask you another question, all right? So here's the projection. Here's what the player has done like through these 2 weeks. He's a top talent. He was drafted in the first 3 rounds of your fantasy draft. Right now he's averaging 17 rushing attempts per game, only 54 yards per game in those attempts. He's had 3 targets throughout the 2 weeks, and he has 1 touchdown.
Is it James Conner?
It's not.
Give me one more guess. Is it Mixon? No, it can't be Mixon. It can't be Mixon. Man,
he's averaging a little over 8 points per game.
Drafted in the first 3 rounds. Is it Zeke?
No.
Who is it?
It's Derrick Henry. That's a big problem. The reason why Derrick Henry succeeded last year was because A.J. Brown was on the outside and teams could not put 8 in the box to stop Derrick Henry. The Giants put 8 in the box and shut down Derrick Henry last week. It's not good. It is really not good. I would trade Derrick Henry on the name alone right now. I'm worried.
What is he worth, though? I saw a Derrick Henry trade go through earlier in the league, but like, it's tough. I don't know what you trade. Like, I don't know who wants him. And somebody that really likes Derrick Henry.
To take him, you had to take him somewhere between like the 4th and like 8th fantasy pick. So you're definitely not getting that value back. And it just becomes how far down the list do you want to go. Like for me, I would take Antonio Gibson rest of the season over Derrick Henry.
Wow. Well, I mean, this is why I didn't want Derrick Henry anywhere. Like I was worried about it. I was worried about it.
He's 27. It's not only just the the production and like tough defenses. No, he's the 27-year-old running back coming off an injury.
There's a lot working. There's a lot working against him.
Yeah.
For me, I have AJ Dillon, who I was really high on, but you know what? Aaron Jones is playing like a man so far, and Quadzilla may take a back seat until Aaron Jones gets hurt. Tampa Bay Bucks have a top 3 defense against the run last year. They've been good against the run this year as well. And the fact that Aaron Jones was so good last week, why would you switch off to AJ Dillon? Unless Jones is hurt, I think that's his backfield. Jones is going to catch more balls, and I think he's going to rush more. I think Jones is much closer to like a Jamal Williams at the moment than he is like a Melvin Gordon. I don't think this is a 1A, 1B situation. I think now you have a 1 and a 2A. Dillon's still great. Like if Aaron Jones gets hurt, AJ Dillon's going to be a top 5 running back that week. But Aaron Jones is still the guy. So I really like Dillon before the season. This time, though, not a good flex option. Bench him if you have another player that you could slot in there.
Yeah, especially with that tough matchup.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Who do you got at your second running back?
All right, Nick, my 100% hot take was wrong. Trey Lance got hurt from the year. I think it's time we acknowledge your 100% might be wrong too. Travis Etienne is going to be a massive bust for fantasy.
He has not been great. It was a promising week 1. It's not been great.
He is currently the RB2 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Through 2 weeks, he has totaled 13 carries and 5 catches. That is horrible. That is droppable if you didn't take him in the 4th or 5th round. Last week on his increased workload, he averaged less yards per an attempt at a whopping 2.2 in a game script where they were up the entire game, where his counterpart, James Robinson, found the end zone for the third time this season and had 23 carries. It will be the Robinson show for now. I think ETN has a chance to pass him up at the end of the year, but for right now, James Robinson has been nothing but efficient for Jacksonville, and that just came against the Colts defense. It doesn't look like ETN's taking over as early as we thought.
For my second running back bust, I have J.K. Dobbins. I did have Damian Harris as of 20, 30 minutes ago, and I still don't think that Damian Harris is a good play. Ravens looked really good against the run last week against the Dolphins running backs, and week 1, the Jets running backs both combined for about 15 each. So solid, but I wouldn't play Damian Harris this week. But I found somebody I dislike more because I saw the practice reports, and that's J.K. Dobbins. His first game back from a super serious ACL injury that took over a year for him to rehab. He tore it in August of last year. Didn't a player like rehab from an ACL and played pretty quickly this year? I forget who it was. I'm pretty sure one player did. Was it Godwin? Was Godwin ACL?
Godwin was ACL. Was
Achilles?
I forget. It was
I thought it was I thought Godwin was an ACL, and Godwin played week 1. And he injured like week 8 of the season last year.
And then he injured his hamstring on the opposite
leg.
So
Right. So J.K. Dobbins' injury was a lot serious than I guess we thought it was. Hasn't played till week 3, and he's going into a committee situation. The committee has not looked great. The Ravens committee right now, through 2 games, 4 running backs in each game have basically averaged 6 points. So not great. On top of that, the Patriots are the 8th best team against running backs this year. So it's a bad matchup. Lamar Jackson is still going to run the ball a lot of read options. I think Dobbins has to get in the end zone to get double-digit points. If he doesn't, I just don't see this being a good game. I don't think Dobbins has a good game till week 6 or something. So I would be very hesitant to play him this week. Who's your first flex option that you're busting?
Mine's Chase Edmonds. He was drafted in some leagues in those no 0 RB or hero RB strats to be the RB2. Well, this is why you should draft your second running back a little bit earlier. He's projected 11.5 points on ESPN. And last week he saw 5 carries and 1 catch, and he's supposed to be the receiving back over there. His counterpart, his backup in Raheem Mostert, saw 11 carries and 3 catches. And now he's got to go up against Buffalo, who is 4th best in the league against the running back position. And this team just shut down Derrick Henry as well. So,
I would bust Devin Singletary as well in that game. That's going to be a bad running game. Overall.
Yeah, it's got to be all in the air for both of these teams. I think guys like sorry, hold on, I got a little off track. I read the wrong note. But they faced Darrell Henderson, who saw the highest snap share in week 1, and they faced Derrick Henry, and both of those guys got shut down. There's no way I'm going to trust Chase Edmonds, who got outworked by a backup running back. I think it's committee all year. So he's really going to need a great matchup or an injury to take over as a 3-down or like a 70% snap share back.
Nick is going to be very proud of me for my first flex bust. It's going to be DJ Moore.
Someone's learning. Oh, young Padawan.
No. Hold on.
You're learning.
No. Here's the thing. I've never been a DJ Moore guy. He's never been on a Nicholas Giacobbe fantasy team. Maybe one year as a waiver pickup, but he's never been drafted by Nicholas Giacobbe. I've defended him against Nick for the sake of the podcast. With that said, I am not a DJ Moore guy. I'm just stating that. There are guys I will die on, but DJ Moore is not one of those. The Saints defense is 9th against wide receivers so far this year, which is pretty good. I love playing the divisional matchup. So here we go. Against New Orleans last year, he had 13.9 week 2, which isn't bad. And then 2.9, I think, week like 16 or something. He averaged 10.6 points this year and 6 targets a game. That's not great. This is a guy in a tough divisional matchup with a terrible coach, a not so great quarterback. Bad situation. There's no positivity to this one. So I am fading DJ Moore pretty hard this week. What do you got for your second flex? Actually, I know what you got for your second flex because we talked about it. So let's hear it.
No, I don't have Mooney. I didn't put Mooney.
Oh, so I want you to state your case for Mooney because I thought you did put Mooney.
It's quite simple. Justin Fields is averaging 14 passing attempts per game, and that number was higher in a monsoon than in a clear weather game. The coaching staff clearly doesn't trust him to pass the ball. So I'm not going to trust even as tempting as it is, the wide receiver 1 on a team that should be passing from behind. They're not doing it. And that David Montgomery's looked pretty good through 2 weeks, or especially last week with, I think, 122 yards on the ground. So I'm not trusting the wide receiver one over there. I wouldn't trust Cole Kmet either. It's why I cut him in 2 leagues. But the guy I'm fading this week is averaging. I'm going to give you another. I can word it as a question. All right. He's averaging 3 catches per game, 84 yards per game, a touchdown, and 18 fantasy points per game. He's currently ranked the wide receiver 16. Who do you think it is?
I mean, my gut was going to say Robbie Anderson, but I know it's not.
So you know it has to be a burner. It has to be someone that's gone deep downfield, caught some big balls, because they only have 6 catches.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to think of who else has had some really ridiculous catches down the field. That's a burner. Oof. I don't know. Well, what round was he drafted in?
He was taken in somewhere between 7 and 10, maybe 11. So he's kind of later in the draft.
Tyler Lockett would have been a guy I would have used too, but it's not Tyler Lockett. Man, who is it? I give up.
Rashad Bateman.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
that's a good one.
So to be as ranked as high as he is and only have 6 catches, and you want to know who he's going up against this week? The New England Patriots and Bill Belichick, who absolutely will not allow a deep touchdown pass. So I'm fading Bateman for that reason. Can he see his workload go up? Sure. But to only have 6 catches through 2 weeks, and now you got to face a guy who tends to shut down your biggest threat, which has been the deep ball for the Ravens. I'm not going to trust him this week. I would look to pivot.
My second flex bust is going to be Brandon Ayuk. Broncos defense is the best team against the fantasy wide receivers this year. On top of that, with George Kittle coming back, Brandon Ayuk is the third option on this team. With Jimmy Garoppolo last year, George Kittle was still a top 5 tight end. Deebo Samuel was a top 10 wide receiver. I think Brandon Ayuk finished outside the top 25. This is not good news for Ayuk. And Jeff Wilson looked really good last week, and there's no competition in the running back room now. So now I believe Brandon Ayuk on that offense is the 4th option. That's not promising. I know we had higher hopes for him this year, but I'm fading him this week against a really good Denver defense. Maybe when he faces a better matchup like Seattle, like he did last week, or something, or Houston, whatever, a better matchup. But right now, I don't want to trust him. Who is your tight end bust for this week?
It's the guy that's probably been benched in every league where he is owned. He was taken very high in his draft. But their wide receiver rookie one is being used in the role that he expected to be used in.
Do you think he's being benched? Do you think people are benching him? He's
benched in our league. Our league, he's benched for Tyler Higbee.
Who's benching him?
Dave.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Kyle Pitts, last 2 weeks has identical stat lines: 5 targets, 2 catches, 19 yards. He is extremely talented. He deserves more workload, but he's not getting it. And when you're not getting it, you don't fall into the trap of, I prefer the talent. If he's not getting workload, it's not coming. It's time to put him on the bench for now, up until he booms. There's 3 guys I have here that are probably on your waiver or were just taken off your waiver that I'd rather play this week: Logan Thomas, Evan Engram, and Gerald Everett.
All right. My tight end bust is the one that Nick just dropped. I had trouble finding a bust, but this is just a popular one. Cole Kmet, a goose egg last week. Justin Fields only threw like 9 times last week. On top of that, he is in there on a lot of plays. Like his snap share is good, but he's in there on running plays and he's blocking a lot. So unless they start throwing more, which I think those throws will go to Darnell Mooney, I can't trust Cole Kmet. So until I can, he's got to be on your waiver wire. He's definitely a bust this week.
Yeah.
Got to end the show like we end every Friday show with Flex on them. We give you one player from each team for each game. They go head to head, and we tell you which one we'd rather, play in your flex spot, because that's the toughest position to decide in fantasy football. Houston Texans at Chicago Bears. Brandon Cooks, or you switch to David Montgomery. I did want to put Darnell Mooney in there, so you could do either. But I feel like if it was Montgomery, we'd both choose Montgomery.
Well, I'd choose Montgomery, but I would take Cooks over Mooney.
Okay. I think I would take Mooney over Cooks slightly.
Oh, okay.
So
I wasn't expecting that.
Raiders versus the Titans. Josh Jacobs did miss Thursday's practice. Just got a notification about it with an illness. So monitor that one. I think he'll be good to go. So Josh Jacobs or Treylon Burks?
I will take Josh Jacobs. He's looked very good, even though he's not getting a lot of usage or goal line work.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And they haven't been on the goal line a lot. I think that's one of his problems, that he's not even looking bad. He just doesn't catch a lot of balls, and he hasn't been on the goal line enough. That's not a him problem. That's a Raiders problem. I'm not super worried about Jacobs. Chiefs at the Colts. Juju Smith-Schuster versus Michael Pittman.
I'm taking Michael Pittman all day here.
I'd take Pittman too. However, this is a good Juju game. I think Juju's gonna have a good game, so I would play both of them.
Yep, me too.
Gabriel Davis or Jalen Waddle.
I'm low on both for the season, but both have proved me wrong thus far. I would go with Gabe Davis. I'd take the more talented quarterback against the worst defense in this situation.
I'll go Gabriel Davis. He was a big boom for me last week, and then he didn't play because of the late ankle injury, but I'll go Gabriel Davis. Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. TJ Hawkinson or Irv Smith?
I like Irv Smith. I don't know if you saw that primetime, but they found a way to use him. He looked like the second best receiving option out there.
He did, but I think there's too many stars that need to be used in this Minnesota game, and Irv Smith is not one of them. I will go TJ Hawkinson slightly. J.K. Dobbins or Damian Harris, two of my busts on the week.
This is so tough.
I'm going to say Damian Harris because he got in the end zone last week, and I haven't seen Dobbins on the field.
Yeah, I would just say without seeing Dobbins, I'd have to take Harris in this one.
All right. T. Higgins or Garrett Wilson? Don't do it. Come on. Don't do it.
I'll take T. Higgins.
You would not. Thank you. I know you would not play Garrett Wilson over T. Higgins.
I think Garrett Wilson has a lot more boom potential than T. Higgins, but
that's fair. But he has more bust potential.
Yeah,
as well. That's your boomer bust play. You have to play T. Higgins. Miles Sanders or Antonio Gibson?
I love this question.
Not for nothing. They both have good matchups. I do want to state that at least.
I'm taking Gibson.
Nick loves Gibson, and he doesn't like Miles Sanders. I'll take Miles Sanders. Jarvis Landry or DJ Moore? I'll take DJ Moore. He has the guaranteed workload. Jarvis Landry was the wide receiver 3 on the Saints last week, and you know what? I think it's because the Saints receiver room is really talented. It'd be awesome if they had like Russell Wilson over there, but he wanted to go play football with Nathaniel Hackett. And you know what? If Russell Wilson went to the Saints, would have Sean Payton have came out of retirement? Because he just said the other day that he might coach again. I'm just saying.
He said on the herd he's going to coach again.
Oh, so he confirmed. Okay, so if Russell Wilson chose the Saints over the bum Nathaniel Hackett, I think Sean Payton's his coach. And the Saints are. Oh, if he goes to Denver, then whatever team's getting Sean Payton to me is going to be a Super Bowl contender. Yeah. Anyway, who are you picking? I have DJ Moore.
So I just have to look it up real quick because I know his workload went down, but Jarvis Landry saw more receptions last week and obviously in week 1 than DJ Moore has seen. He has 2 more targets, and this week. Oh, this is so tough. I think I'd rather take Jarvis Landry against the Panthers defense rather than DJ Moore on Marshawn Lattimore.
All right. Christian Kirk or Mike Williams?
This is a good one. I like this one. I would go Kirk because I think you saw week 1 when Allen was in that lineup, they spread the ball so much, no one exceeded more than 4 targets. Where Christian Kirk is clearly the wide receiver 1 there. He has 18 targets through 2 weeks. I think he has over 200 yards. So they're utilizing him for as much money as they gave him. So I would go with Kirk here.
I would go with Mike Williams. This is a top 5 offense in the NFL. This is the wide receiver 1. I don't think Keenan Allen's the wide receiver 1 anymore. I'm going with Mike Williams. Until he got hurt last year, he was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. And his injury didn't take him out for the season, but it lingered. So I'll go with Mike Williams. Allen Robinson or Hollywood Brown? I am going with Allen Robinson. The Ravens have given up points to wide receivers so far this season. Allen Robinson looked like to have a mini breakout game last week. So I'm going with, the Arizona Cardinals have also given up like a good amount of points to receivers, I believe. So I'm going to go with Allen Robinson.
Yeah, the Cardinals have allowed, I want to say the most of the second most.
Not against receivers. I'm looking now in Fantasy Pros.
I think to quarterback then maybe. Whatever it is, I'd go with Allen Robinson. He had the upside of 2 possible touchdowns.
Yeah, the Cardinals have allowed the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So.
Yeah, and the what's it called? The Cardinals haven't been able to put together 4 good quarters. It feels like they've only put together 3 good out of their first 2 games. So I'll take Robinson.
Drake London or Tyler Lockett? 2 of your boom guys.
2 of my booms, but like I said, wide receiver 1, maybe he was wide receiver 2 on my boom team. It's Drake London here.
I'll go with Drake London as well. Tyler Lockett got his boom game last week. He gets 4 of them every season. He had 100 yards he had 100 yards last week. So that was a boom Tyler Lockett game. AJ Dillon versus any Bucks wide receiver. If Julio suits up or Russell Gage. Man, I busted AJ Dillon, but I just don't want to play a Bucks wide receiver. I think I would play AJ Dillon knowing he has that goal line work.
AJ Dillon out carried what's his face?
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones. So I would go
How? That's not the same game that I watched. I watched Aaron Jones run all over them.
Unless if I read it wrong. Let me double check on that.
I don't think
I saw
so.
before because I was gonna bust Dillon and I saw a lot of usage.
I'll move on while you're looking that up. Jeff Wilson or Courtland Sutton. Nick loves Courtland Sutton, so I think we would both go with Courtland Sutton here. But Jeff Wilson should have a nice game. However, Denver's good against the run. Denver's the number 1 team against the run, so it's a tough matchup for Jeff Wilson. Also a tough matchup for Courtland Sutton. 49ers are 4th against receivers. So tough matchup for both. I would still play both though, because they should both get a ton of volume.
So AJ Dillon had 18 carries last week, and Aaron Jones had 15. So we did barely out-touch him, but Aaron Jones was a lot more efficient.
Yep. Monday night, Sterling Shepard versus Ezekiel Elliott.
I hate this one.
I'm so out on Zeke. I can't. Tony Pollard looked better against than Zeke did last week. It happens every time Dak is out. I can't. I'm out on Zeke. I want no part of Zeke.
I would take Shepard's 10 targets over Zeke's guaranteed workload. I'll go with Shepard as well.
I'll take him as well. All right, that is our Friday show for week 3. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully we helped you out with all of your flex questions and your lineup questions, your start sits, etc. And if we didn't, join us Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. YouTube and Facebook is Primetime Fantasy Podcast, or on Twitter, PrimeTimeFFPod. We're going to be live from 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time to 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, answering all of your fantasy questions, start sits, trade recommendations, should you drop a player, our busts, our booms, whatever it is, we'll answer all of your fantasy questions. If you enjoyed the show and you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like, a comment. We'd appreciate that. If you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It really would help. Share the show on social media. You could follow us and interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at PrimeTimeFFPod, Facebook and YouTube, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Thank you guys so much. Best of luck in week 3. I hope you all win your matchups.